Okay. Yeah, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Does anyone have any disclosure of pecuniary interest at this time to note? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, adoption of the previous minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder, and then I'll read it out. Moved by Mary, seconded by Ian. That the minutes dated February 25th, 2025 of the short-term rental committee be adopted as circulated. Are there any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Okay, motion is carried. Business of the committee. Review of the current bylaws. So as per every meeting so far, we start with 2 bylaws. Last time I think it was either Sean Mike or just Mike himself who gave us some really good notes on it. Does anybody want to start the conversation?
Sure, I'll start.
Okay, Ian?
Notice the Lambton Shores fees were $500 a year. Like that's the lowest we've seen in, it's been presented to us. The occupancy permit was a maximum of 2 people per bedroom plus 2, and that's been fairly common. But they had up to 4 bedrooms, which is a lot of them have been 3 bedrooms. But they also had children the time of booking, 12 years and younger, were not included in the occupancy calculation. I don't know if 12 was too old for that, or another group had kids 2 years old. And then parking spaces, I think they're a little light on it. There's 1 parking space for 1 to 4 renters, 2 parking spaces for 5 to 10 renters. And I didn't really see a whole lot with the Waynfleet ones that, but well, I guess one thing that did stand out to me in the Waynfleet was they could only have 1 stay for a 7-night or 7-day period. So you couldn't have a 3-day and then a 4-day. So for us, for the shoulder seasons, we quite often do that. Yeah. And again, quite often, well, yeah, for the shoulder seasons, I think it would be detrimental. But and the other one said no more than 3 bedrooms. And I went on and read some other places where he said if you had more than 3 bedrooms, you're supposed to lock those doors and keep them locked. Don't know if that's a good idea or not. And a maximum of 6 people. So 2 per bedroom. And they had a fee of $1,000. So I like the fee of $500, but that's personal.
Thanks, Ian. Does anybody else want to comment? Evan?
Thank you. I was going to comment on that occupancy that Ian brought up. The 2 people and then the 12 years and younger don't count really in the head count issue. And I won't go into it yet, but in the draft section of ours coming up later in the agenda, it talks about occupancy and on premises, how many people. And I wonder if we should think about scenario wise, a husband and wife and kids come and they do a short-term rental and they're in the place. And what happens if they invite a brother and cousins up for the afternoon and go into the beach and go to the fireworks in Goderich or something like that? On premise, does that count? Are they allowed to have people over for a barbecue and play at the beach with grandma and grandpa for the afternoon, but then only that set amount of people stay that night? So that's the one thing that kind of stuck out in these 2 bylaws with that comment about 12 years and younger don't count. And then on ours, it talks about that, but we'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll put a pin in the premises and a good comment about the others. Anyone else? Barry?
I was really surprised to see in Waynfleet that that they were recommending 3 bedrooms and no more than 3 bedrooms. Because you think about like a multi-family, like, like a grandparents and, like 2 families, you need 4 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms is not just, is not going to cut it. And, I think what probably what most people do along the shore is they rent to families, and multi-generational families. So I think three bedrooms is silly. And sort of in terms of occupancy, reduce, sort of considering the kids as not occupants. But, if you've got 4 adults and you're probably, I think probably not considering the kids under a certain age as occupants. Because, they sleep on futons or, that people bring travel cribs and stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this question of Ian
Mhm.
later. Do you have an idea of the age? Because they said 12 and one of you said, I'm not sure if 12 is the right number. If you had an age, what would you say?
It's about a family, like we've got a family that comes every year. They've got twins and they bring friends. And, they started out when they were 6. Now they're 15, those are kids and their grandparents come and, their parents come. So I don't know who's gonna monitor that or, that I think but I certainly think that 3 bedrooms I, I think about 5 bedrooms and that's a party house, right? But, you think about a group of women going away, people like their own room, and they're there, they're quiet, they have a lovely time, but they don't want to sleep together, right? So,
Well, that's a valid point, but I do know some women who are not that quiet, so we'll maybe put a pin in that one too.
not in my life, Jennifer.
Well, they are in mine. Okay.
The other thing, Lambton Shores said about in terms of responsible person responding in 30 minutes. I think that's a really short time. And well, Wainfleet said 45 minutes. Like you want to be able to respond, but sort of when you make a phone call and when you connect with the responsible person, it may be a bit of a challenge. So, I would push it to 60 minutes, that's for sure.
One thing they did in that 30-minute response was by text, phone, or in person. So I agree, 30 minutes. We're down the road 3 or 4 cottages. It could, by the time you get dressed and get organized and get your head about yourself to go down, it could be 30 minutes easily. And that's just going 4 doors.
Okay, Anita, did you have a comment? Or were you just waving at us?
Well, I was waving at you because you're all so friendly. But yes, I did have a couple of comments just to dovetail on some of the occupancy things. I didn't see where either one of them, either one of those municipalities talked about occupancy in terms of, does anybody have an issue with families bringing a tent? So yeah, there's 2 people per bedroom. There's 3 bedrooms, the maximum 6. But is there 6 sitting and sleeping out in a tent in the yard? I wondered about that. I also wanted to piggyback on some of the comments about under 12. And although, kids are kids, and it's great to have the kids there and it's a fun experience for them, but a body is a body. And even though they might not be hooping and hollering like a bunch of, bachelor boys at a bachelor stag or something, they still have a stress on the septic system. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that even though they're not maybe rowdy and disruptive to the neighbors, we should keep in mind that we're looking at the septic system on occupancy limits as well. And I've got a few other comments, but those were the 2 that, Ian and Evan and Mary had just chimed in on. So I just chime in on those myself.
Well, Anita, why don't you just finish your comments? Because, my back's kind of to you, as friendly as I am, and then we'll keep going this way.
Well, I wondered, I did say, I think it was in the Wainfleet, they talked a little bit about Airbnbs or B&Bs. So I wonder if when we do this, should we make a distinction between B&Bs, which I think Wainfleet if I recall, a B&B was classified as something that was on your premises, and how it differs from a short-term rental, say a cottage. And yeah, that was one of the things I wondered if we shouldn't maybe have a discussion about, or at least make a distinction on. I think Ian talked about the licensing, $500 versus $1,000. I believe one of the staff members that I believe possibly Lawrence had reached out to had said that you know, it was easy to implement. Well, I think both of them said that they were fairly easy to implement and that it seemed to be going well. But I wonder if we start with a lower licensing fee, and then, you know, this is going to be a big change for a lot of people. Start off with a lower licensing and, you know, work your way up from it. I know we want to talk about having this revenue neutral, and I think it will get there. I don't think that we have to get to revenue neutral in year 1 or year 2. I think we can ease into it with a lower licensing fee for maybe the first or second year. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Anita. Sean or Mike? You good?
Yeah, a couple of points have already been mentioned. I agree with what Anita said as far as distinguishing between short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts. So that definition, I think, can be incorporated into it. And to pick up on the tent comment, I think Lambton also mentioned had a definition in their bylaw on what is a dwelling and what is not a dwelling. So perhaps that's how we can deal with that issue. A lot of the other licensing requirements, I think we've already seen. It's just a matter for this committee to decide on what is appropriate for our area as far as how and what reference do we make to those parameters. So I think by looking at all of these different bylaws, we identified categories that we address as far as either allowed, what's not allowed, and then what are going to be as far as licensing.
Okay, thanks. Glenn?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think we need to exercise a little bit of common sense. Like, I don't think we want to make this onerous so we get into checking birth certificates for age and that sort of thing. We need to be very respectful of families, irregardless of ages, as the comment's been made, and just use common sense in applying what we deem is appropriate for this. Thank you.
Okay, I know I'm the chair, but surprisingly, I do have a few comments. The 4 bedrooms, speaking as the owner of the Kingsbridge one, it has 4 bedrooms. It also has 2 living rooms. I sound like a commercial here, but the living rooms have couches, they have futons. So I think we need to, as Anita said, look out for the septic. So you get 2 per bedroom. That would be my comment on that. When Ian talked about the lower fees, 500 or 1,000, and then Anita, you chimed in on that somewhere in here. And I will say, when I read it, I didn't read it as Waynfleet, and then I read it as Lambton. I just read this document, so I'm not exactly sure where I saw this. But I think it was in one of the surveys where it said we had it free the first year, and then we started doing it, and then everybody kind of jumped in, and that made it really easy. And I thought that was a really smart thing to do. So where we land eventually, I don't know. I mean, you've got the comment right there, Mike. We know what we're looking for, and we're getting all sorts of examples. But I like Danita's idea of like a soft start, and I think saying, hey, it's free the first year, and after that, it's, you know, whatever it is, you're going to get a lot of people being very compliant very quickly, I would think so. And I think the time, 30 minutes might be fine in Lambton Shores because they're a heck of a lot. They're maybe less rural than we are. Like 30 minutes, I can't get to Wingham or Kincardine in 30 minutes. I can get to Goderich if it's, you know, the roads are open during the summer. And I remember that, right? So, but you can't get there in 30 minutes going the speed limit on Highway 21 from my house, just so you know. So I think 30 minutes is too short. 60 minutes, if you can text or I acknowledge I got this or something, because if you haven't replied in an hour of, in some sort, whether you actually replied, but if you acknowledge, heard, I'm on my way, I'm trying to get there, or whatever it is, we deem the appropriate response. After an hour, you know, they didn't get the phone call or the text. They just didn't if they didn't respond. That's my experience in my personal life. I always follow up. Did you get this text? Are you alive? Mike, I like your comment about, you read it somewhere, the dwelling. Like, let's not have tents. The dwelling is this, and Evan, you talked about it, premises, maximum on the premises based on the septic is how I think, based on being a STR, director of somebody who owns one. Mike, did you have something?
Yeah, just Jennifer, to your point about the fees, and we've already touched on it as far as potentially having a graduated fee structure. But I think the key is transparency so that it's not, X the first year and it's going to be, something, exponentially different the following years. But if we want to have, let's say, a 5-year window, say, okay, this is what it's going to be. We're encouraging everybody to participate. And if somebody doesn't jump in until year 2, this is what it's going to be year 2, year 3, or however long you want to make it. But a graduated licensing and no surprises.
Mary?
I think when I was when I was reading and when I've read the past couple of meetings is that there's going to be added expense for cottage owners, right? When I think about a fire inspection, I don't know how much that costs. There's electrical inspections. There's, I think one of the municipalities, it's every 2 years you get your septic inspected. Those are all big costs. And it's whether you can find someone to do that stuff, right? So trying to ease people into that, right? Because if I'm sort of getting used to the idea of we're gonna have to do that. But if somebody tells me I have to do it and I got to do it by a certain date, I'm probably going to get my back up, and so really sort of helping people understand and having some resources, are there going to be people that are going to be able to do the fire inspections, and can the municipality help people locate those people, I think it's when you look at the restrictions and the possible penalties, it's a little like it's going to be onerous for people. It's going to be a little overwhelming. And so I think I really like the idea of the first year free, because then people, they're eased into it. And I think not only, I think it was Waynfleet that did that, but I think a couple of other municipalities have done that as well. So.
Ian?
I agree. The free is nice. But I think if we go out and say, this is the new standards you have to keep up to, there's no charge for it. And then all of a sudden, 2 years down the road, well, by the way, it's going to cost you $500 now. But if you come in with like $100 the first year, and then everybody's used to making a payment, and it says, and be upfront, so that it could increase or it will increase likely. You're going to get a little bit more buy-in. If you say it's going to be $500 or $1,000 at the start, there's going to be a ton of people not going to do it. I'm not going to apply for a license. I'm going to wait till I get caught. So I think there's a fine line there, whether you do it for free and then without actually telling them there will be a fee for sure down the road. I think if you bait them with free to get them to sign up, then you're doing ourselves a disservice. So again, I like free, but
Evan?
I'm cautious on this free or graduating into the cost just because of it being a user pay, especially if we go with a third party in the monitoring. There's costs to be covered right from year 1. So I'm not sure how a low fee or graduating fee in can cover the costs from year 1 when those, if we do with a third party and whatever, those costs are going to be right from the start.
I'm going to let Anita reply to that, and then Ian.
Thanks. And Evan, I do agree with you on that, but there should be, you know, a little bit more cost recovery, but taking Mary's comments into account about, you know, there's going to be a cost for fire inspection and electrical inspection and so on. But flipping that too, if I was cottage owner, I think I'd sleep better at night if I knew that, you know, my cottage was considered fire safe, that I got an inspection done, and I've got a piece of paper here that says I got a fire inspection done and an electrical inspection done. I think that just speaks to the safety of your short-term rental. So, but I do think that, you know, by having a lower fee on the first year will help people with that. And generally, when you get a fire and electrical inspection, I believe it's good for 2 years, but I wouldn't want to be quoted on that. So I think going back to Glenn's comments about common sense, I wanted to speak about that too. I think we have to have common sense when we're putting this licensing together, and I think everybody's got something to contribute here. But going back to common sense, we can't put common sense in this bylaw or this licensing. You can't legislate common sense. So it has to be outlined. And as much as we'd like to have common sense, I think approaching this in a very monitored and graduated way, I think that is speaking to the common sense. Thanks.
Thank you, Anita. Ian?
The idea of having it cost neutral is going to be pretty tough too, because we have no concept of how many short-term rentals there are out there. There could be 60, or there could be 50, there could be 100, but they're also, we've got a lot of cottagers in our association that rent their cottage out, but they might only do it 3 times or 4 times a year. Those guys aren't going to sign up for a short-term rental. It's not worth it to them to pay $1,000 or $500 and then go through all the rigmarole and the red tape. I think the red tape would be more harmful than a $500 fee, because you look at all the ones we've looked at, they want fire exit, they want the fire extinguishers inspected, they want electrical. I don't think electrical is a big thing, whether you even need to worry about electrical. Maybe you do it some, I don't know, but the wet inspection for sure. But your insurance company makes you do that too, though. So I think we can over-regulate it. But
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I'm going to go to the clerk before I go to Glenn.
Just a little theme that I'm picking up here is the intention to have the municipality be the inspection authority, or are these private contractors that supply the municipality with the certificates that say these things have been done? Just a food for thought, and that would also, you know, bear on the price of the licensing fee as well. If the municipality is going to be doing it, then that fee is going to go up. Whereas if it becomes the onus on the owner to prove these things or to provide these things, then the cost of that fee would go down. It's just a comment.
Okay, Glenn?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And we also have, I think we need to keep in mind that we have a high percentage of our residents that aren't involved in this, and they will question why they're paying for others to do this. So again, it's a balancing act, I think, that we have to keep in mind when we talk about the costs of licensing.
Mary, and then Jennifer.
A couple of things. Does the municipality have a fire inspector? I don't know this. No?
fire chief.
The fire chief. And would they be considered someone that would go out to all the Airbnb,
I'll go to
Airbnbs?
staff for that answer if they want to take a stab at it. Otherwise, we'll have to find out.
There'll be a cost for that. Like nobody does anything for nothing. So there would be a cost associated to have the fire chief come out.
I can respond to that, maybe.
Sure, Anita.
I don't know what our municipality is, but I do have a friend of mine that's a firefighter in Windsor, Essex. And part of their job on their slow days is they go to different places, like particularly apartment buildings, and they do fire inspections there. So it's part of what they do. Again, they're full-time firefighters that are, you know, on a contract and everything, where we have volunteer firefighters. But I'm just putting it out there that that's oftentimes what's happening in bigger municipalities.
Okay, Jennifer, then Ian. I have no idea what we're talking about. I was going back to Mary when you were talking about the different inspections, and Ian, you also alluded to it, and they do get pricey. Kingsbridge uses a company that comes from Owen Sound for our fire inspection, and we have to do it annually. It's part of our insurance deal for the whole thing, and we do the short-term rental and Kingsbridge Center, and it's not cheap. And there's none more local that we have found. And not necessarily this particular company, but it's kind of like when you get an assessment on your farm or you got your thing and it's only good for 2 years. Well, nothing's really changed in 2 years, right? If they've gone through your house and you haven't done anything, they should be checking you, change the batteries and your carbon monoxide thing works, right? But you get charged the same price every time. And this is what, like the first one's a value, the one 2 years later, I think is overpriced. And I think we would have to come up with some solution to that because it's an onerous cost, a fire inspection that often, which I think if you have somebody walking through and the first time they go through, they check and you do have fire doors or whatever, right? After that, if your makeup hasn't changed, they should just be checking that your things are working really and not charging you that whole massive price. So, and that brings me to the comment about the cost. We have an interest in varying degrees, graduated, free, starting low, going higher, not making it too high, making it revenue neutral. I mean, my feeling is until I see numbers, I don't know what my opinion is. If we don't actually know what the cost is of running this program, or we don't even have a ballpark, we're just kind of guessing, right? So how can we say what we want the fee to be? Why would I say $500 if the thing costs $200 or if it costs $1,000, right? I think we should not ballpark it. What do you call that? Parking lot it. Put it in a parking lot or pin it or whatever you do, and make the decisions about what do we actually want to cost when we have at least some idea of what it might cost, right? We go through our wish list and we say, we want these inspections, or we don't think the electrical needs to be inspected more than once or whatever, right? Then you'll know how many inspections you're actually talking about and how much your end cost might actually be. And then you might have a better guess at what number we should be landing on. That's my thought on that. Now, Ian, did you have your hand up?
Couple things. The wet inspections. I know I had Ray Gay come from Lucknow from Cliffs Plumbing. He's retired now, but there are plumbers out there that have their wet inspection. And a wet inspection, if anybody doesn't know, it's for a wood fireplace. They inspect the chimney, make sure it's okay, and the fireplace is up to code, and it's got the surround around it. And the other thing is the ACW septic inspection that they're doing. Does that have any merit to the size of the building, or what are they inspecting? I know you're in Kinloss. We've had our septic system inspected. I think we're on our third go now. They open the tank up, look inside, wash out the filter, make sure the water's flowing in, flowing out. They have no idea how many bedrooms we have in the house, how many washrooms, how many washing machines, or anything in the house. They never ask, never. So they can't tell how many people are in the house, so they'd have no idea what volume it should be. So I'm not too sure what the septic inspection for ACW is going to be like. So if that would be part of our inspection, they could qualify, say this septic system is good for 8 people, then I think that would certainly alleviate
I'm not sure if staff wants to speak to what we.
Just leave that with staff. I don't know off the top of my head, but I could speak to the inspector and she'd know for sure. I know that when they go, they just basically look at the system as I understand, like you indicated, Ian, and I do not think they asked for bedrooms, but if we get that clarification and Kelly has her hand up.
Yes, they do ask number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and yeah, they have a whole questionnaire that they go through with the homeowner and then put that information into an iPad, so they'll have that property information.
I can't hear you, Jennifer.
Sorry, I just turned off my mic for your listening pleasure. But it may be because we've improved our house, but it's certainly on record how many bathrooms my house, I mean, it's assessed on how many bedrooms and bathrooms, right? So we should have, somebody has the information because I'm taxed on that information, right? Yeah, yeah.
Different departments.
Of course, we know nothing then. Okay. Anybody else? Mary and then Sean.
I guess I have a question just about joint septic systems, like for some cottage rows that like they share septic systems, right? And I think that would be like that's a real concern, if you've got three cottages that are renting and you've got, 10 people in each. I think it's different. It's probably different if you've got a single property and you've got one system. And so it varies, I would imagine. The other thing that I wonder about sort of in terms of a fee for short-term rentals, is it graduated? Like if you rent your property for 2 months out of the year as opposed to 12 months out of the year, is there a different rate? Because I suspect that there are lots of properties up and down the beach that they don't rent for 12 months out of the year, right? And so if I'm if I'm paying a fee, and it's the same fee as someone else that's, if I rent 3 months and somebody else rents 12 months, I think that's something to look at. The other thing, can I just one more?
Yes, continue. I was just going to say, continue on.
Evan, you mentioned the the monitor, the group that probably, the township's going to hire to monitor the rentals. Is that actually, I just think that's a whole lot of money. For, is it going to be a true representation of the rentals that exist in the county or in the township? It just seems like it's a lot of money.
Somebody else, I think you had Sean and then Evan.
Yeah, I'll just comment that I do think that it's a little premature to be talking about fees. I think that we need to have a better understanding of what the program's going to cost to administer. I do feel pretty strongly that it should be revenue neutral or cost recovery. 30 minutes seems like not very much time if you're the one responding, but if you're the neighbor that has a complaint about the rowdy neighbors, then 30 minutes could certainly drag on. So I think that should be taken into consideration too. But yeah, I'm not sure how we get there, but I think that we do need to have a better understanding of what the administration costs for this program will be. So.
Thank you. And the follow-up to that, the last two comments, it's the unknowns that we don't know right now. Are we doing third party or not? How much expense is there in the program to know how easy we can be the first year to get people signed up to this and be on board? So it's just the unknown, the follow-up to the comment from Mary. If we go or not, I don't know, but it's just to make sure the costs are covered.
Jennifer, yes. And this was, I completely agree with Sean over there, clearly, because I brought it up first about the money, but this is just going around in my head because we've recently had a budget meeting and I'm not even sure how this could be structured. However, there is something called the K2 Win Benefits Fund, which is for community betterment. And we have used it mainly to pave roads or in Port Albert for the community betterment and perhaps, I think if this is better for the lake shore, that an initial funding that, there is, it doesn't all initially have to come. I think it needs to be revenue neutral, but like with anything, garbage or whatever, it's never revenue neutral until sometime down the road because the startup costs are always so great. So if we keep that in mind and, we go back to the actual money, but there are different ways to fund it as well, right? And we recognize there's going to be a lot of startup costs that are not going to be, duplicated down the road. So that's my comment, I guess. Well, thank you very much. That was very well thought out. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. 4.2.
Can
The
I
draft
just,
statement of
Jennifer,
intent.
can I just say one more thing about the contact response time on the 30 minutes? I wondered if it would be feasible to have in any kind of bylaw that you have a contact person, but you have a backup contact person. So if somebody hasn't responded in whatever time you decide, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 45 minutes, that the system or somebody has another number. So anybody applying for a license has to provide 2 contact numbers.
That's a good point. I see some nods around the table. Florence is busily jotting it down. So it is 7:37, and I know how much smarter we get as the night goes on, so I think we need to move along. But we have lots to think about there. So statement of intent, staff has given us a draft. We have any thoughts? I'm sure we do. Who would like to start? Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I have 2 comments to make. Two of them would be substantive, or at least material, and the other 2 would be just wordsmithing. The first 2 sentences or first 2 lines in the statement of intent, that the short-term rental program strikes a balance between the ability of the owners to rent their properties and provide a safe rental experience, would be the line that I would like to insert.
I'm sorry, I distracted the clerk. Can you repeat it?
Sorry, to strike a balance between the ability of the owners to rent their properties and provide a safe rental experience, comma, and then it carries on. And when I was looking at the statement of intent, I also referred back to the terms of reference for this committee. And one of the other subjects that was mentioned in our terms of reference was providing education opportunities as we undertake this licensing program. So again, just a suggestion as far as language, an additional paragraph, ensure that the short-term rental program provides opportunities for education on the licensing requirements, because I think that's a big chunk for the owners to get their heads wrapped around. And my editorial changes, the last line of the first paragraph, the program will pay for itself. About the program will be revenue expense neutral. And that the last line, the rights of all residents are respected.
Perfect, according to the clerk, and I must agree. More comments? Mary?
I just wonder about the rights of residents and visitors. Because, certainly when you think about who comes to stay here and what they contribute to the community economically, and I think probably their rights need to be taken into consideration too, but they have to behave, and that's what we really want them to do, to be part of the community, but we also want to be welcoming. So I don't know where that can fit in, but I think that's an important thing to add.
Mike?
Just to pick up on Mary's point, then that would be the second line of the statement of intent, the renters and their guests' obligations.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I really like the education, because if we look at like something like fireworks, they're setting off fireworks. Where is it posted that they're not supposed to? They don't know that, and it's entirely possible that you know, the owner doesn't know what we only allow it on the 2 weekends, you know? So first you educate, you say, this is what we'd like you to do, right? The people doing it don't always know that they're not supposed to be doing it, right? I don't think that in the past our bylaws have been widely circulated and proclaimed. Sean, are you waving your pen or you got your hand up? You're just going like this? Okay.
Ruminating.
Oh, Anita.
Yeah, on number 4, where number E or letter E, maximum numbers of renters and guests. I would feel better if that was a little, that language was changed to, instead of maximum number, like something to the effect of occupancy will be monitored, or something about occupancy. I'm not sure what the wording would be, but I think rather than maximum number, it should be occupancy. Because the word occupancy has come up time and time and time again, with not only with this committee, but with people that have reached out to me with problems next door to them with short-term rentals. It's a lot of it is occupancy. And when you say maximum number of renters and guests, it sounds maybe just a little bit soft.
If I could add to that, Anita, and of course I can, I'm the chair. I'm going to add to that because my family is from the States and they often come up. And my immediate family is not from the States. So say Patty and Bob are rented a cottage on McDonald Lane just less than 6 months ago. Well, all my kids and grandkids went to see them. So the occupancy was well exceeded, but we all went home, right? Like to say, well, we can't look at your cottage, that seems a little rude. And we were well behaved and didn't do fireworks or, you know, but you want those gatherings to be able to happen. So there's a difference between going and being a guest and, hey, let's all spend the night, right? Like, I'm not sure what the verbiage for that, but I don't think we should say guests.
Maybe
Yeah,
then
Anita?
it's overnight occupancy or something. to
Yeah,
that effect.
overnight. Yeah. That's what I would say. Mike?
I also had that notation that there's a difference between overnight guests / renters and additional day visitors. And again, if you distinguish between those two. And again, if you put in a number, that'll be the decision of this group.
Any more comments?
Just on that page, page 47 of the package, it references at the very bottom, 6C, late evening, early morning disturbances. I think being more specific on times might be a suggestion. Whatever time is appropriate. Personally, I go to bed at 9.
Yeah, I get up
Yeah.
at 5, so 9 o'clock is really late for me, but that's probably too much.
So the
Whatever
noise,
your name is.
the noise bylaw does articulate a time. So I guess the intent here is to be a little bit more conversational around, you know, these are your expectations. So, but, you know, construction noise, and as an example, cannot happen before 7 a.m. You know, those are hard and fast rules that are out there. And I think on the next page, it does speak to, you know, adhering to the noise bylaw. In other words, if you're kind of going beyond that early morning disturbance, and we get a complaint about it and we find out that it was 6:30, you know, you decided to bring your skid steer to your rental, that could be worthy of a contravention. Anyway, but I can, obviously we can amend this however the committee sees fit.
A great point, clerk. I forget your name, Florence. I would like to mention that 7 o'clock because I was staying at a short-term rental in the Thousand Islands. And at 7 o'clock, the jackhammers started right across the water and it was really loud. So at 9 o'clock, when the township, you know, opened, I called and their bylaw is they can start at 7 in the morning. And I would say that that's pretty early to start construction along the lake. I don't see why we couldn't make it 8 o'clock. I'm just saying 7's early if you're on vacation.
That's not a short-term rental, guys. You're running the jackhammer though,
No, but it was a short-term rental who was,
complaining.
No, the short-term rental was getting the work done, but the bylaw of the municipality allowed it, is what I'm saying, at 7 in the morning, and I think
But
that's
can't
maybe a
blame the
little.
short-term rental person doing it.
No, I'm blaming the municipality. That's why I'm saying ours needs to be different. Anyone else? I did mention I had coffee. No, it wasn't coffee, it was caffeine. Look. Sean's got his hand down now. Mary's got her hand up, or is that just your pen? Okay. Anyone else, or shall we move along? Do you have enough direction, Mike?
I guess I was just looking for some clarification. So this is a draft renter's code of conduct. The renter is expected to sign this, right? And then the owner is to maintain a copy of this for a certain period of time. Do we envision that the owner of a short-term rental is going to have a package of information for the renter that stays on the premises? Jennifer's nodding her head. Okay, so what would be part of that package? Would it be, here's the sample renter's agreement that you just signed. Probably a copy of the short-term rental license should be included in that package. And since we're making reference to the renter's agreement, that there's a noise bylaw, there's a fireworks bylaw, that there's a specific parking plan, assuming we decide that that has to be part of the licensing requirement, perhaps all of those then should be appended to what goes into that package. Also the reference to the waste collection system. ACW posts on their website every January what the new, garbage pickup schedule is. Again, part of the package. That's your standard package that goes in the, the binder that the renters would have access to, and whatever else we, think is appropriate. Like, where's the fire extinguisher location and so on.
So Ian said, and I said off mic, we do that because he does it and we do it. The thing is, I've stayed in other municipalities clearly, and sometimes it's a book. This is what's expected of you. And our short-term rental, we've tried to come up with, this is what you should be doing. But I think part of the education piece is, this is what you need to have on your property. Here are the bylaws in real easy to read form, and here's what the fine is. And when they walk in the door, you're always handed, at least every time that I've been, I've signed lots of rental agreements. I agree to do this, and here are the bylaws. And I'm not offended by it. It's just, okay, these are the rules here. This is what we do, and this is what you do throw out, and this is what you don't throw out. I think part of this, what we're doing here, is trying to make it easier for the short-term rental owners to be responsible and be good stewards. I mean, we all try very hard, but I think, well, it certainly sounds like we could do better. There's some things I never thought of that I would be putting in this year's book. Evan?
Sorry. We've got a 2-page welcome letter that's emailed to them, and then we give it to them. We do not get them to sign it. But they're given a electronic copy and a hard copy. But if you make it too complicated, they're not going to read it. Like, how many times do you go down 5 pages on your computer and click, I agree, and have no idea what you agreed to? So I think it's got to be simple and straightforward.
Mike?
But one of the issues, I think, is looking after all stakeholders, and one of the stakeholders is ACW. So there should be a little CYA involved there as well, that
CYA?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry.
Due diligence. It stands for due diligence. Thank you. Mary.
That's municipal language, right? I think also, I think you're right, is that probably most people that are short-term rental renters, they're business people in maybe a little bit of business people or big business people, but you got it down pat. People book online, you send them a contract, all that stuff. But I think it would be really wonderful to have something from the municipality that you could stick at that back door to say, these are the bylaws, that all that kind of stuff, to reinforce the contract that they sign with the rent or the rentee, the renter, the rent, anyway. But I really think that for, 99% of the short-term renters, they're responsible. And it's the bad actors that are a pain in the, that's municipal talk too, right?
Sorry, yeah, okay, Sean.
Yeah, I'll just comment the appeals process and the demerit points. I like the framework that's there. And maybe it depends on what type of monitoring program is used for this, but I wonder if instead of a conviction, can't even speak anymore, conviction, it's an unresolved complaint. So if it was the responsible person, if they couldn't resolve the complaint and it was brought to the municipality, then that would be equal to a conviction. And I didn't put much time into considering the demerit points values and how those are weighted, but I like the direction it's going.
Valid comments, and I echo that. I was kind of confused about a few of the numeric numbers and thought I'm going to have to think about that, but I like the direction. I also like the unresolved complaint because it's very expensive and very time consuming to get a conviction. You're right. I think that's the better wording. Any other comments? Mike?
Just a question, the demerit point system document, I'm assuming that is the framework for what is going to be incorporated into the bylaw?
I think that's the suggestion, and at this point, we add or subtract or make comments. Would you like to continue on that?
Just one editorial comment. The first paragraph references Fire Protection Prevention Act and the Provincial Offences Act. The addition might be and other relevant ACW bylaws.
Excellent. I can see the clerk busily scribbling it down, so she must think so too. Any other comments? Okay, so we've moved past the demerits. We're in the occupancy. Oh, wow, that's the end of the document. Draft sections of a proposed. Right, 4.2. Oh, we were on 4.3. We just moved forward. How forward thinking of us. Okay. So I'm going to ask Florence, do you have enough little scribbles there to keep you busy, or would you like some clarification on anything, or?
Well, I think, aside from the good conversation this morning, you can tell I usually sit in this seat in the morning. There was some good conversation and some good points brought up, which I think would be helpful with the next sections that would be brought forward. So I'm asking the committee, based on what you've read so far, what are the next pieces of draft bylaw that you would like to see? So the intent here, in the way that I foresee this, is these individual documents, the occupancy, the demerit, this will eventually get consolidated into one document with the statement of intent kind of leading it and being the preamble to it. So, is there parking, or what other elements are top of mind that you would like to see brought next at the April meeting?
It's okay if you raise your hand again, Mike. Go right ahead. It's like Jennifer over there. Go ahead, Jennifer. You have another question.
A large chunk, I think, that we have to deal with is ultimately what are the requirements that we're going to establish as far as licensing? What do the individuals have to prepare? Do they have to do an electrical inspection? Do they have to do a fire inspection? That whole list. I think we've seen in the other sample bylaws, a whole shopping list of what other municipalities are asking for. And I think that is a fairly substantive list of things to go over. Are we in favor? Are we not in favor? Is it going to be too costly, or is it something we can live without? I think with what the township is doing as far as the septic systems, I think that goes a long way of making everybody comfortable that every lakeshore property in the next 3 years is going to have gone through a septic system, analysis or evaluation. So that would be just my suggestion.
Okay, Ian?
What is a short-term rental? What, are we gonna set guidelines if somebody rents it out for 4 weeks? Or 2 weeks, or is it a full-time? Or is it 3 months of the year?
So I see Florence writing, so she wrote down definitions, so maybe a selection of definitions. Do we agree with this or this?
I think for the next meeting, requirements to be licensed as well as a solid list of definitions would be lots to consider at the next meeting. That's
Okay,
before we get too excited and give me more.
well, just so that this is in the back of your mind and Mike touched on it, more than touched on it. It was one of his stronger ones. Yeah, forget the word he used. But I think to me, it's critical. It's education. So I think we all agree education is needed for everyone. What does that look like? You know, well, it's a great word. What does it mean to us? And maybe that's too much for the next one, but just kind of keep in mind, like, what does education look like? Okay, those 3 things are manageable. In that case, if you have new business, put it in your parking lot. Or no, you can mention it so we don't forget, but we might not get to it. Does that make sense? Any more new business? Mary, are you waving? And then Mary, then Anita.
So just about education, are you talking about education for the community and education for the renters, or?
I think that's my point. What do
Okay.
we mean by education?
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, Anita?
I was hoping that we could maybe include parking for another section. And I only say that because I think there's been a lot that has talked about parking in other municipalities that I think we could piggyback on just as a conversation starter without reinventing the wheel. And while we're talking about education, I'll throw it out there that I believe that the success of this program is going to hinge very greatly on education for the short-term renters, not the people that rent, but the people that rent out to. So I wonder if it's possible to have like an education seminar on Zoom or town hall kind of thing, and invite people that are interested in looking at what short-term rentals look like, what the licensing looks like, and just sort of be transparent about it once we have a draft program in place.
Okay, so that's more of how we would accomplish
Down the
that.
road. Down
Yes.
the road. Yeah.
Okay, but I wonder,
I'm planting the seed.
yes, I wonder if in the meantime, before our next short-term rental committee meeting, we could put on Facebook, we are having conversations you can watch on Zoom or you can come to the meetings. Like, I mean, that's part of the education. They feel more like they're part of it. And if you want to say something or you have a thought, reach out to anybody here on the committee, right? Or the township. We are actively doing this now.
Great idea.
Clerk?
Just as a point of interest, I was speaking with Roger Watt last week, last Friday, actually, and he had advised that after every STR meeting, he does watch them, like he will watch the recordings. He does send an email out to the Ashfield-Colborne-Lakefront Association with a synopsis of what happened, and basically is letting the lakeshore communities know that this is happening. It's because obviously there will come a point where we will have a draft and it will need to be presented in some way, shape, or form to the communities that this will affect, because otherwise, we need to have that grassroots kind of buy-in before it goes back to council. At least that's from what I gather from speaking with other staff members of different municipalities. If you don't do that, it's not going to be great. So we need to do that. We need to do something. So
That's great. Hi, Roger. When you're watching this. Okay, Mary.
Just a question. Is there a timeline? Is there a date when we want to put this into action?
Florence.
So the ad hoc committee has until I believe the end of October to pull something together. Obviously, if more time is needed, then we can, have conversation with council. But the expectation is that this kind of brings up roundabout to the October. The idea being that there would be some kind of implementation for 2026.
Any more questions? Okay, so the next meeting of the short-term rental committee is scheduled for April 22nd, 2025 at 7 PM or at the call of the chair. So do we want to have a conversation about the meeting times? 7 PM? Whatever his name is, Mark.
Yeah, if this committee agrees to change that to 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock or whatever the case may be, we could do it case by case basis if that would work out better for the folks that are in the room. Like, if you think maybe April for those in the room here that would 4:30 would work, we could do that. But if you're adamant that it doesn't work for any of them, or we can make it different times throughout. So that's just my comment.
Evan?
For April meeting to help staff out, I propose 4 o'clock.
I think April would be great. Earlier is 4:30 better for staff because it is open till 4, right? So is 4:30 better?
It's up to the committee because if those folks in this room can't make it for 4 o'clock, we have to put it 4:30. I look to the committee to see if they can accommodate 4 or 4:30 or whatever the preference is.
Right, Glenn?
Yeah, I think a 4 o'clock would be a good aim. Let's try that. See what happens.
Does anyone here have an objection to a 4 PM meeting in April only? Give it a try. Sean?
My workday is till 4 PM, but I could probably accommodate.
Would 4:30 work better? 4:30 is fine with staff, I just heard.
Either is fine.
4:30 then. Okay? So for April only, we'll see how it works and then we'll go forward on a case by case basis. Sound good?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for that suggestion. Okay, then at this point, I think we'll call for a motion for adjournment. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Mike, you've had your hand up too many times today. Somebody else. No, Mike and Sean. Oh, Ian again. Wow. Moved by Mike, seconded by Ian, that the short-term rental committee does now adjourn to meet again on April 22nd, 2025 at 4:30 PM or at the call of the chair. All in favor? Motion carries.